What are the best studies that show plants are pro-inflammatory and that many are carcinogenic?
So the best things are from the actual field of botany. You don't want to look at nutritional epidemiology because it's garbage. So you look at the hard sciences, which is biology and botany, and like there are nearly 1 million different chemicals in plants that they use as defense. And so this is just an objective truth. I mean, there are things that bind nutrients, there are things that disrupt your hormones, there are things that stop you from absorbing certain things. There are things that are directly toxic and harmful that we know are directly toxic and harmful. So what you can do is you can look up those individual toxins. The WHO has a great webpage called Natural Toxins Found in Foods. Now they say foods, but literally every single thing is a plant, mushroom, or algae. There isn't a single thing on there that's toxic that's in meat. So that should tell you something, that there isn't anything identified in meat that is known to be toxic. There's all these epidemiological studies put out by special interest groups that have doctored the evidence to make it appear as if meat were bad, but there's nothing actually in meat that they can say, hey, here's this poison, here's cyanide. You can say that about 2,500 different plants, though, that they have cyanide. And so, this is just an objective reality. And there are a lot of studies showing that lectins, tannins, oxalates, phytates, saponins, hormonal disruptors, all these sorts of things are in plants. And there's plenty of studies showing that they cause harm, literally going back hundreds of years. This was a major part of biology and in philosophy, was understanding this. It's understanding the sciences of how plants worked and how they could kill you. I mean, the ancient Greeks knew that hemlock would kill you, and they poisoned people with hemlock to kill them. That's how Socrates was killed, was with hemlock. So this is something that's always been known, really, is that plants are toxic and that you have to understand how to use them and utilize them safely in order to be safe. So looking at the different toxins, going on that web, I have that in my Plants Are Trying to Kill You talk on my page, and then on the list in the bibliography on the Low Carb Down Under video version of that, the links for that WHO article. And you can just go through that. You can just see all the different categories. And that's not even all the categories, that I named. There's more categories on the WHO website, and there are more categories that aren't even on the WHO website. So you can go in there and you can look up and you can see exactly what it is. But this is hard science. These things exist. There are a number of government websites as well, and I have links for those in many of my videos, especially the ones on plant toxins, where they talk about how there are all these different toxins that are found in food. You need to be careful and cook and treat and do special things to them in order to detoxify them, ferment them, put these things through different chemical processes, which we've done for thousands of years to try and reduce the toxic level and increase the bioavailability of the nutrients. Something we've been doing for thousands of years. And so, I mean, that's just a tacit understanding or tacit admission that like there are poisons in here. Because if there weren't poisons, you wouldn't need to detoxify them. And so you can look at those and then sort of look them up individually, look up all those different chemical categories individually. But, the WHO even says that some of these things can kill, they can cause serious harm, and they can be mutagenic or even carcinogenic. I mean, the WHO says that. And then you can look those up individually to find out which ones. But there's many articles. There's an article from Professor Bruce Ames in 1989, and he identified 42 different toxins in plants, 20 of which were shown to be carcinogenic in lab studies. And then you study cancer biology. I studied cancer biology, and we learned that there were over 100 known carcinogens in many of the produce items that we eat, and there were dozens in every produce item. The information's out there. You're not going to find it in an epidemiological nutritional study, mostly because they're crap. That's not real science. That's hypothesis generating, but it's not actual science. Most of it is completely corrupted by the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the big food industries. They're the ones pumping out the vast majority of this nutritional paperwork, and they're peer reviewing it themselves because the Seventh-day Adventist Church has multiple medical centers around the world, and they have a major medical university called Loma Linda in Loma Linda, California, and they do all their own peer reviewing. So any plant-based nutritional propaganda that comes in is like, oh yeah, stamp of approval. So of course it gets approved, and they sort of weed out things that they don't want and don't peer review them and don't approve them for publication. And they obviously approve anything that meets with their ideology, which is really corrupt.
That right there leads into my next question. So I saw your video presentation on the Seventh-day Adventist and Dr. Kellogg. You said they pushed for plant foods to reduce sexual desire. I wanted to know, what line of research were you on when you found that thread? And was it all a matter of public record, or did you have to dig real hard to find that?
No, that's public record. I mean, that's in their own documentation and writings and publications. They say that. Ellen G. White was their prophetess and one of their founding members, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, she was there from the beginning. She was influenced by Sylvester Graham, who made graham crackers for the same reason, because he theorized that you had to eat bland, plant-based foods in order to suppress sexual urges. This was a notion that I saw. The earliest record I saw of this was in the 1820s. It probably came before that. From a doctor who said that this is how you suppress sexual urges, is eating a plant-based diet. Decades later, Sylvester Graham made graham crackers, influenced Ellen G. White. She heard this, learned about it, and then said she had a vision from God that said meat was evil and toxic, and it caused lustful feelings, and lust was a sin, and therefore you should stop eating meat. That's in their doctrine. So this isn't a secret. I mean, this is an open admonition. This is their religious tenet, that meat is toxic. It's a horrible thing that you shouldn't eat. You shouldn't bring in your body. That was one of the main reasons, was because it begot lustful feelings, and eat a bland plant-based diet in order to stamp that down. This was open. They were openly talking about this. Ellen G. White wrote dozens of books. Kellogg wrote dozens of books, and spoke about all this stuff. So no, this is all just public record. It's just no one really knows it anymore.
Would you think that it would really concern the discerning public that their food is being tampered with intentionally for religious purposes?
Well, I'm sure it would bother people that the guidelines and everything like that were influenced in this way. I mean, some people may not care, but I think most people are really trying hard to do the right thing for themselves, for their health, for their children, for their parents, for their loved ones. And so they're just taking the advice of the authorities, and finding out that the authorities are full of crap isn't a nice realization, or realizing that they're corrupt and they've been bribed or they've been misguided from ideological wants that stem from this decision in the 1800s that everyone needed to stop eating meat for their own good. And that's why Kellogg started making Kellogg cereals, processing plants, trying to make these cereals. He was very, very influential. I mean, he was like a doctor to the stars, and he had some of the most famous people of the day, the captains of industry, major politicians, Henry Ford, I think Carnegie, Will Durant was his patient for a while, which makes sense because so if people don't know, Will Durant is one of the more famous historians ever and classicists ever. He wrote a book called I, Claudius. It was turned into a BBC drama. So it's very famous. He's very, very, very famous. He wrote The History of Civilization, the history of civilization. So this guy was a major, major figure, and he was heavily influenced by Kellogg. And I remember reading an excerpt from Will Durant. He said that people are on this side, they think this, and these other people say this, but Dr. Kellogg agrees with the first people, and you can never go wrong listening to Dr. Kellogg. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I had no idea. And so this guy was really influential, really, really influential. He made a lot of waves. And so he influenced, I think, something like 36 cereal companies all grew up out of his area. A lot, Post cereals. That Mr. Post was one of his patients and clients, and he ended up founding his own cereal companies after he was influenced by Kellogg. But Kellogg would make these processed cereals and nut-based fake meats. That was the origin of fake meats was with Kellogg. And he would make these nut-based ones to try to replace meat so that people didn't need to eat meat. And that's what he pushed on his patients. That's what he espoused for. This is the healthiest thing. This is what you need to do. And you needed a clean colon, and you needed to have multiple enemas a day. He invented a machine that would give high-powered enemas, something like 60 liters of water in and out of your colon in under a minute. This was like intense. And he gave himself 2 of those a day. For some reason, because even though he was married for something like 60 years, he never once slept with his wife, according to record. He never, So there's some sort of crazy sexual repression there, but
possibly.
Yeah, possibly, just possibly. They adopted all their kids. That was it. He was just so brainwashed by Ellen G. White and the temperance movement, when they were just like, sex is evil, masturbation is evil, and you just can't do it. So he just would never have sex or do anything like that. And he was just, I think he was just a bit deranged, from this brainwashing. But he did a lot of things. I think that he did a lot of harm to people. And this was just, he is the person that influenced America to get circumcisions. That was him. That's why we did it. But it wasn't in order to help people or be more hygienic. That's what he claimed. That this is more hygienic and it reduces cancer rates. That's true if you never wash yourself. If you never wash your genitals, then it can increase your risk of getting penile cancer. From my previous studies, I remember it being by a factor of 3. So you're 3 times more likely to get penile cancer if you don't wash under your foreskin. But if you do wash under your foreskin, there's no difference. So it purely comes down to, do you wash yourself or not, you sick bastard? If you do, then it's fine. There's no difference. But also, penile cancer is vanishingly rare, especially before the era of HPV. And then if you just wash yourself, there's no difference. So that was a complete lie. That was a complete myth. He did it in order to make it difficult for people to masturbate and to fornicate. That was his view on it, and to deter people from that. And then people figured out lube, and then that was the sort of end of that story. And so everyone was going back to having sex and masturbating, but the practice of circumcision stuck around because they didn't know that this was just about masturbation and fornication. They thought that this is actually healthy for my kid. And so they did that, and they had no idea. But that's why he did that, and that's why he pushed that.